dependent variables. Now, let's go back talking about how you're going to build uh, your final study. And this way we can cover the chapter. Okay. Now, what we will be talking about when you're doing your research, as you're doing it now, marketing, and there is a finding in it, you need to start communicating this finding with the management. In my case, consider me as a manager, or consider me as your professor, whomever. It's you need to communicate your finding with me. In a real market, you need to communicate with your supervisor or your manager in that time. So how I'm going to do the communication marketing research properly when I'm doing the finding. So if you're doing finding and you cannot communicate it, it's a useless work because people would not really, find any benefit in it. Now, so we will talk about today about how you're going to write your research, marketing research, and how you're going to present it. So the objective of this chapter is understand the objective of research, first of all, and the research report. Describe the format of marketing research report. You discuss several techniques. We'll discuss graphically how we're going to display these research, because lots of people are visual. They like to see graph. They like to see how these these information convert to graphs, and clarify problems encountered that in preparing these reports, and understanding the importance for this presentation, why we need to do a presentation, why once we do a study, why we do need to do a presentation regarding that study. Now, so the value of communication research, it is a well-designed and well-implemented research project that are successful only if the result communicated with the client. As we said, if you do your research and you don't communicate it in a good writing, good presentation, good setup, then is a scattered information that people will lose their interest in it. The treat of an effective marketing research, it's complete realizations of time, effort, and final utilize the marketing research. So financial resource of utilize the marketing. So when you do a research, when you do a presentation and you do your report, it is a part of it where as a manager, I will appreciate, because I'm or I just would, come up with one conclusion, one of the two conclusions, whether you have wasted my resources, my money, or you've done a good job, because I need to make a decision as a manager, and you need to make the right research. And when you've done the right research and you did not present it very well, then the first thing comes in my mind is that you have wasted my resources. Now, the marketing research report, it has to be objective and effectively communicate the finding that market research project. So you need to find a way to effectively communicate your finding to the management, to provide interpretations of those findings. In the early stage, we said there was lots of management who doesn't understand, what's a chi-square, what is t-square, what is these things. So you need to not to explain to them what's a t or a chi-square or all these. You need to do it logically, make them understand, okay, if somebody with this age, with this income, with this independent variable will end up doing this dependent variable. But he needs to understand it in a business way. He needs to know whether there is a market for him to make the decision. He wants to make a decision. So you need to convert all these statistical information to something logical and business wise. It's neat. And when you do, you need to establish the credibilities of the research project. So keep in mind, research project is very sensitive work. Anywhere on any spot that the management finds out there is a weakness in it, or you're not able to answer any question that they raise, you lose the credibility right away. And people will be shaking their heads. You think that you're doing a good job, but they're shaking their head. They're saying, just finish it. I think we're wasting our money and we're wasting our time. So you need to build your marketing research report indicating that establish your credibility, how you done your studies, how you found out, how did you do your calculation, all these, what does that means, what's your result. This has to be built that you did it in a scientific way. And also to serve as a future reference. So when you do a document, or well, they might not be applicable today, but you might say, okay, we see a great growth of such a thing, and within 5-6 years, that the way we see it is going to be, that part of the market dominant with certain nationalities, which is we can do this product for that nationality, something in that sense. It might not be used today, but it shows we can always go back to it and help us in strategic and tactical decisions. The client should be, the client should be giving a detailed description of the research objective. So what's your research all about? What you're trying to get? What's the objective of it? What's the question that you asked in a thing? How did you ask them? Where did you ask them? Literature review and relevant secondary data. Now, if you're doing a primary, you need to present the questions of your primary. If you're doing the secondary data, you also need to present this question. You're looking at the secondary data when you do it, just like your primary data. The only thing when you're looking at the secondary data is you need to evaluate them and see whether they have done a right job. And this would be going through, probably if you're not doing it, the management will be asking you, well, how did you get this information? Oh, you say, oh, I got it from the internet. Well, internet from the website. There's so many websites, and some we spoke about them earlier. There's some biased information. There's some information is driven for political reason, for different reason. Is done. This is independent research? Has it been done for our goal? So literature review and relevant secondary data is the description of research method, if you're doing either research or somebody else, you might find it. And finding display in the tables, graphs, and charts. It could be done a combination of these, or one of these, or two of these. So something becomes a visual that's showing this is the pie chart. 50% of it is taller than 158, 40% of it. This is like it should be, a graphical that is a visual. Interpretation and summary of the finding. So then it comes in, after you go through this, you need to explain for the people what kind of information you are deriving from these numbers, from this graphing, and what did you find out? And eventually you go with a conclusion and recommendation. A good marketing research, it doesn't leave it like this. He's going to, once you do a summary or conclusion, you say, well, this is my recommendation. Maybe today, the number of this ethnicity is growing 20% every year. And we believe in 4 years, there would be at least, say, 70% the whole in that community with this ethnicities. In that time, you might be having a booming business in certain products. So recommendation should be there as a part of the marketing research. So you're not a statistician. You are connecting the marketing statistics information to the market and making sense. Just like the video you saw, he's connecting the information between the statistics and psychology. You're here connecting the information between the market, the statistic, and the market. That's what you create a construct. Now, research report or presentation must establish credibilities for method, finding, and conclusion. So these are, as we said, if you cannot establish the credibilities, the first thing the management says, what a waste. And the second thing is going to go, scratch them. And, you will be in trouble the rest of your career business. So the credibility is the quality of the report related to its accuracy. Is it accurate? Is it believable? A professional organization. We're not talking about, something that it's more scientific. The more has a scientific in it approach, the more is more credible. These days, and of what we're talking about, there is a new science being developed since 70s, and it became a very controversial. They say, well, okay, all these religions and the stories that every religion has is fine, but we don't believe in these stories unless we go and dig in and find an architecture's, archaeology's research regard of these things, finding the archaeology finding for these. So lots of religion stories these days under questions, because these scientific people goes and start digging and says, wait a second, we don't find this information that we find it in your holy book. And as long as we don't find it, it's not credible. So the science is moving in everywhere as far as to our belief, to our religion sector, and they're questioning everything. So even this picture that's behind me, that's where the archaeology believe in that story. But when they hear the story, they come there and start digging around, finding whether the story is true or false. And there's so many things opening up. So your marketing research is so many similar to this. There is a quality of report related to this accuracy. There is people should believe in it and should be done professionally. The believabilities is a quality of report based on a clear and a logic thinking, a precise expression, and accurate presentation. So you need to be very precise in the expression, very scientific, very logic thinking, and very accurate presentation. Numbers, dependent and independent variable, research, lab research. Well, it has to be very clear. Now, you have to be, one more thing. You have to, when you present or you write your report, you have to take into consideration whomever is there who is trying to read your thing. Now, back to the example that I said about the archaeologists. There is a group, he said, who said, we don't believe in any stories that any religion says it unless we find some sign of it. There is another group who built a different group who's they go and dig around, and once they find something, they try to match it to the stories. They trying to improve their saying, okay, this our story is right. See this sign. They just fitting this very difficult, but there is an audience for these people, and there is an audience for these people. Otherwise, it cannot be, there cannot be the two different groups. So type of readers, type of people who's sitting there, they are different type. There is a type those who really only look at your executive summary, which is the top management. Those who read the summary and the finding, okay? And those who read the entire report and the appendix. So you have a three type of people they are different. So when you're writing executive summary, you want to make sure that you in you write it in the end of your report, not in the beginning of your report, because it's an executive summary that somebody wants to read an hour in less than 15 minutes. He wants to read 2 pages for your finding. He doesn't have the time to read everything. But there is people who will read the summary, and then they read the scientific findings that you have, and those who read the entire report. So you have a three type of readers. Now, this is the last slide, and I'm going to give you a break to just communicate with each other. The format of marketing research reports. First of all, you need to write the title page. Indicate the subject of the report that the recipient will read it. The name of who is title, the summary, the thing saying I'm gonna write about Nike getting export in Uganda, exporting Nike shoes to Uganda, for example. This is a title, a subject. Now, include the recipient names and the positions and the name of the organization. Include the numbers of phases that designated in particular department, division, or division. The table of content. Then you go with the table of content, and then the list of the topics of the report in the sequential order. So you need to have a table of content, and this is why you're doing a group work that should be done in this way. May include the page number, a full research reference to the table and figures. Now, you start with the executive summary, which is present a major point as something that a manager, whether he's decided he's gonna want to make a decision, whether he wants to spend more time in reading it, or maybe that executive summary should be good enough for him to make the decision. What's the purpose in the executive summary? How to convey and why the research was undertaken. Okay. The summarizing of key finding. What did you find? This suggests the future action. And introduction. After you finish the executive summary, which is, keep in mind, executive summary, it would be the first page in the first part of your presentation, your report, but it's written in the end. That's the whole goal. Once you finish your studies, your research, you take that executive summary of that and you put it in the front and this is why I call it executive summary. Then you start contain the background information necessary to complete understanding of a report. Then you write the report and method sections, procedures, how did you do it, communication, how the research was conducted. Maybe you do a presentation But keep in mind, your report will stay in the shelf for the next 4 or 5 years. So it should have all the information in it. Communicate how the research was done, issues addressed, research design and use, types of secondary data that included. So what kind of a research you found in this case? Uh, if there is a primary data, then you do the primary data. If there is none, you just try to use the secondary data as a primary data, and sample processes if there is a primary data. Now, there is a data analysis and findings. These are all information that a management wants to see to create a credibility for you when you do a research. Presentation finding various projects. Data analysis require differ from project. So the project that you are doing now, what kind of a data you needed to build your construct, to build your null hypothesis, to build your hypothesis, to come up with the final theory. Data is presented, as we said, and could be in table, figures, or graphs, and conclusion and recommendation. There in the end, you write the conclusion and recommendations. And conclusion is descriptive. This is a statement that generalizes the result of your research. Each conclusion directly reference, research objective and recommendation that you address how to the client can solve the problem, because now you're in a stage understanding better the market, so you can do the recommendation how a management might solve the problem. And you need to present your weakness in the research methodology, and this will create more credibilities for you. Because if you say, okay, I did that, but I had this issue, I couldn't meet with the people because of COVID-19 or whatever, it creates more credibilities. It doesn't, your weakness, funny, it creates more credibility in you. And if there is necessary, there is an appendix, is your major work, you put it there, whatever the work you have done. And it should contain whatever the complex, detailed, technical there. So people, if they have a doubt, they can go back. And these are usually the other researchers looks at that. And let me see, we will stop up to here. I'll give you probably 15 minutes of break, and I'll leave you to communicate with each other. So just to finish this group communication, and please communicate with each other, find out who is working with who's the group, and then exchange the contact emails or whatever in order for you later on start working on your presentations and demos. So you will have 15 minutes, and you probably we will be back at 2 after, I'll give you 20. So there is a more than 15 minutes. Please finalize all the pending issue between all of you. And your team is your team. You work as a team member and as a group member, and you need to finalize. We're back. Let's start again. We will continue what we have done. Hopefully, with this break, you will be able to communicate with the rest of your class and find out your team and kind of whether you major put a plan for how to finalize your assignment or a group assignment, or you later on going to talk to each other to finalize your assignment. And once again, your assignment due this same day next week. And also you will have a test, which is a 12 question. You will answer 10 of them, okay? And your presentation will be the week after. Okay, so let's continue with where we stopped. Now, once again, I'm just gonna, I had to go very quickly over this part, which was very important, but I think we should go again with it. Just want to make sure that you understand your format for marketing research and report, because this is the end of all your hard work. If you're working in doing, you know, for 3-4 months and they're paying you for doing that, they want to see the result. And if you're not giving a good result for it, then you are not, you're showing that you are not working properly. And this will hurt you probably in your career or in your work. As we said, there's a marketing research report. We said that those who read only the executive summary, and those who read the summary and the finding, and those who read the entire report and the appendix. The format, we said, it's going to be like this, and I'm going to supply you with this data, this note. So you please follow this note. It says that the report should be having a title page. It's indicate the subject and probably the name of the recipient. It also should be talking about include the recipient names, their positions, include the numbers of our phrases that designate a particular department or division, and there is a table of contents. And then the table of content, you will have the list of the topics that report in the sequential orders. May include page number, reference to the table, and figures. There should be, as we said, executive summary is the last thing that you do, but is usually the first part of the page of this report. And present the major points of the research project, the purpose for it, convey how and why a research was undertaken, to summarize the key findings, and to suggest a future action. This is because the executives usually don't have time to read all your reports, but they need to, with this first 2 pages or 1 page, they need to find out what's kind of decision they need to make. So all this information should be summarized in the first 2 pages. Then you start the introduction, which is contain the background information necessary for a complete understanding of report. If there is, you need to do that. Then the method and procedures, how it's done, the communication, how the research was conducted. If there is a primary research, especially primary data. If it's a secondary data only, then you need to explain how, if you can dig in and find out how this secondary data has been collected. So you need to have a very credible research to be done. Research design used, type of secondary data is included, and procedures used if a primary was data was collected. Sample and sampling process, Data analysis and finding. Here, where you're going to become a little bit more technical, presentation of finding values across, start, finding out these information, statistical information, how you make it more logical, more business-wise, supporting your whole theory and your hypothesis. Data analysis require different from each project. Data is presented in tables, figures, graphs, whatever. It's more, it becomes more visual. And then you can use these figures and graphs into your presentation also. Then you're going to end up with a conclusion and recommendation. And recommendation usually it presents that you're not only a market researcher, you have a sense of marketing also. You understand what is needed. The conclusion, probably descriptive statement that generalizes the result of the research, which is each conclusion directly reference the research objective. So the conclusion that you come up with it is referencing when we did the research, this has been dependent and dependent variable, and we found that the increase in the independent variable, independent variable caused the increase that much in dependent variables. So this is how you define the whole construct in the conclusion. Recommendation, as we said, it's address how the client can solve the problem at the maybe they're not going to go with your recommendation, but you need to put your recommendation to at least to put a value in your research. You cannot just leave your research unrecommended. And make sure if there is a weakness, you put the weakness, because believe me, when you put your weakness into your research, maybe because of limited funding or limited timing or difficulties to be in that situation, these are all going to give you more credit, more credibilities in your research. It's not going to say, oh, this is, so the next time if they're going to do the research, they might ask you for, they might give you more fund or give you more time to do that or give you more manpowers. And then in the end, there is an appendix, all the information that you think should not be part of the whole report and should be added there. You will put it there, mostly data that you collected, the numbers, or you collect all these information that you, is a statistical and literature background that you've done. As we said, the technical information, the details, and the contains some complex information. Now, lack of, there is mistakes that you need to avoid it. And it is about major problem, a common problem that the marketing research reports has, and that could cause, less credibility, less believability. Maybe your reports will be make the people feel that's a waste of time and money and resources. You need to avoid these things. So if you're just putting data and you're not interpreting them, the people who's going to sign on your check to make you the payment, they will feel, because they don't understand that the technical language or the statistical language, they might say, okay, this it's a waste of the time. We're not understanding anything, so why we are wasting our time reading this thing? So that's one thing, the lack of data interpretations. Unnecessary use of complex statistics. So most of the market researchers thinks that if they put so many statistics data there, it's going to be more credible. Sometimes it's going to work against them, because once you feel it's complex, human nature is not, tries to stay away from complexity and complex statistics. Emphasize on the packaging instead of the quality. So if you're trying to, you need to deliver your message. So the tools that you're going to use, is there to deliver your message. So don't overgraph things. Don't over, the quality, the shining thing, these are something make enhance for your presentation. But sometimes you would see people doing some presentation or doing a research, and they are forgetting the what you are trying to deliver, and they're putting so much things around it. Um, Not relevant, placing too much emphasis on a few statistics. You know, um, once again, once you do a statistic research, there is few things in the mind of the somebody who gave you that order to do this research, and he believes, for example, the height is will be contributing to buying a basketball with a ball for basketball playing. Now, this is one data. If you're not putting that into consideration, the first thing is going to come. So, well, this information is incomplete, and you're looking at the income and all these things. So, you want to make sure that all these things into placing enough emphasis on all the statistics that you are finding related. Now, when it comes to the presentation, and in the presentation, you need to um, have a guidelines for the preparing oral presentation. And this is that you're going to do it on the last week when you're doing your presentation. And it's basically, you need to take it into consideration to ensure that a visual component probably do not detract from the information being communicated. So the music background, the loud things that you need should not be distracting. Be friendly, honest, warm, and open during the oral communication. So if the people don't ask any question, that doesn't mean they don't have a question. You want to make sure if they're not asking question while you're presenting, then you open up for a Q&A and give more time for a Q&A in the end of the presentation. Be knowledgeable and confident while you're delivering the presentation. And if somebody's asking you questions, yeah, because it's a group work, you might not be able to answer it, but you can have somebody else to answer this question. Have a well-organized, inspiring dialogue prepared. So get the people engaged in your presentation and be an active listener in a way. If somebody's asking a question or making comment, understand what he's trying to say and answer his questions. Now, begin with a slide that contains presentation title and presenter names. So as a group, you need to put a slide, the title, and who is your team. Identify the client and the research firm, if there is a client, and as there is a research firm, so that's, but if there is a client, you just put the client. Include the address if you have to. Include the address, research objective, question, methodology, what was the description of the sample. Your process of setting up your credibility for coming up with your information. Then here you start highlighting the findings. What did you find as a independent variables, and how these are driven to the hypothesis or null hypothesis, and this how it is driven to your theory, because theory is made up of construct. Conclude with the recommendation, conclusion. So you summarize all your report, and you need to conclude with the recommendation, conclusion, and research implication. So the research, how they will help the management will make a decision. Um, this is different. There was slight different when it comes into um, an early adopters of technology, and it is about what other issue can be examined with this survey. So if you're talking about an early adopter and an entrepreneur, a new product, mostly if it's in the field of technology, what can things can be derived from the survey that you have? So it gives it an extra um, taste in your research, more value in it. Identify the problem that found in this questionnaires and what are the important topics to include in the presentation. So here is, you want to make sure that the research that you've done is readable, understandable. So if you are talking about, for example, here, if it's how effective, for example, uh, uh, is your research. You need to put some kind of scales on it, and the scales will be say 49% and more varying frequencies, and the percentage and the value of percent in this case. So you need to put the scales. Let me know when you found 49%. What does that stands for? Is it frequent? Is it somehow infrequent? It is occasionally happens. These numbers, it need to be converted, as we say, coding to something that I will understand when you show me a numbers. And that can be done basically into a graph also. Different type of graph can really gives me a better picture than numbers, because in numbers I usually need to be coding it and converting it, but here is already giving me some indication very clearly of how it looks like. So from there I can write a chart, makes it more visible for me. And when it's written things, it might not be as visible as as charting. So always use a graph and chart, makes it more uh, understanding. Now, once again, these are some samples of how these things works. I'm gonna send it as a note, and you just take a look at it to understand um, how dependent and independent variable works together, and how you build your null hypothesis from it, and then you derive your theory, which is the construct part of it. If you notice here, they talking about the mean, and the mean is max 7. So the male is 4% informational. This here they say they found out what most effective way of doing advertisement, and you will because let's say the manager decided to um, do a marketing campaign, an advertisement, and he doesn't have focus. He doesn't have time nor the funds to go all type of the advertisement. So you do a marketing research and you find what's the best way, effective way of delivering a message. So here you ask for do the survey and you find out there is, you know, 4.3 of percent of male thought that the informational way delivering a message is more effective. The humor is 5.8 is male who found out a humorous way of delivering an ad campaign. colorful. It is indicating a different people who is what kind of ad are effective. Once again, you start showing, on a graph ways, and these are a way of presenting your statistical data, which is numbers and numbers that it doesn't make sense for mostly for a CEO who doesn't have a statistical background to something that makes more sense for him. Now, here I'm gonna just go quickly on, we'll be going back to this on the next chapter, but basically, I'm not spent so much time on this, but we said there is a dependent variable versus independent variable. But sometimes the independent variable is more than one. So, for example, when I'm gonna buy an ice cream, or when I'm gonna decide to go to Starbucks and buy coffee, there and there is a few independent variable which is drives the dependent variable. When I am from middle class, when I am happy, when I have time, when I have, these are all independent variables, which is they have to be in a certain level together in order to drive me to buy a coffee. That one example. The second example, the prediction of satisfaction. There is not one thing will drive a satisfaction. Could be a consumer innovativeness, belief about the advertising, negative impact, interest in advertising in a business. So all these three, if they reach to a certain level, they might be creating satisfaction. Another example, when an employee is satisfied, it is a time when he is satisfied, when he is getting paid well, working in a nice atmosphere, and working with the right people. That's what result in a satisfaction. If he's getting paid well, but he's working with the people that he hates, he's not going to be satisfied. So there is a few independent value will result to one dependent value. And he might be on a certain level where he looks at, oh, he's getting paid well. But on a different level, he needs look, oh, I like the people that I'm working, or there is a future in mind. This is all could be independent variables, which is drive one dependent variable, which is the satisfaction or happiness or whatever. Now, this is one more chapter, which is, well, I'll try to go very quickly over it and make sure that uh, at, uh, you review that also. So I did some switch between them. This is, I believe, is earlier chapter, which is this is a chapter 12. We finished chapter 13, which is the last chapter in the book, because I thought that chapter is very important for your assignment and presentation. So I wanted to present that first. And now we're starting chapter 12. This chapter is more talking about statistic numbers. You can do this on your own time and do your try to understand it much more. But they are more numbers, crunching numbers, defining number, explaining what numbers are all about. So here, what you're going to do, the learning objective is to understand and evaluate the type of relationship between different variables. what kind of a relationship? The more, the better, the less, the better. What's one the more better or two more the better? It's the relationship that you need to understand between them. Um, Explain the concept of association and the covariance. We will discuss the difference between the Pearson coloration and Spearman coloration. What's the difference between them? When do we use the Spearman coloration and when we use the Pearson colorations? Explain the concept of statistical significant versus the practical significant. Where is the numbers is statistical important? Understand when and how to use the regression analysis. So here it's examining the relationship between two variables. There's only two variables here we're not doing multivariables. And basically what we're trying to do here is we do a presence, direction, the strength of association between these two variables, an increase in this one, how much is going to increase in this one? The type of variables, whether they are connected linearly, so the increase in this one will increase in this one, same proportion, or QV linear, which is you saw this like a, shape like this or shape like this goes, and they are two different. Increasing this unit by 5 will increase this unit by 10. Next 5 will increase 15. Third 5 would be increasing 20. So that's what you call curve linear relationship. Now, the covariation is basically it talks about the amount in change in one variable that's related to a change in another variable of interest. Sometimes the best example, when you have $10, you probably go to Tim Hortons. When you have $20, you're still going to go to Tim Hortons. When you have $30, you still get, but when you have $50, you go to Starbucks once. When you have $100, you go to Starbucks twice. So the covariance is the amount of change in one variable that's consistently related to the change in another variables. The scatter diagram, and it comes in, it is a graphic plot relative to the position of variables of the horizontal income versus how many of you buying coffee from Starbucks, and the location, the horizontal comes in when it starts, and you start the income or the money that you have. We said at 50, so it starts from the 50 and start, where you buy the coffee in it. The scatter diagram, possible relationship is a positive, negative, could be curve linear or non-exist. So the positive, the more you have income, the more you go to Starbucks. The negative, the more you have income, the less you go to Tim Hortons. The curve line is linear. Is once you have 50, you go once. Once you have 60, you don't go. Once you have 70, you don't go. Once you have 80, you go 2 or 3 times. So they don't have or non-exist. You have 50 or 100 or 1,000, you don't go Starbucks. This is non-exist. Now, I'm going to talk about Pearson. It is just very quickly, it's a statistical measure of the strength of a linear relationship between two metrics. It's very simple. It says if I increase one variable here from the independent, with it, how much variable will increase in independent? If I'm increasing 10 units, might increase one, or might increase five, or might increase 10. So it shows how strong between these two relationship between them. And usually is the variable is between -1, and this is what is the negative we say, and +1, which is, this is what is the positive. So the more, if you look at the buying a coffee from Tim Horton, the more you have income, the less you buy from Tim Horton. This is -1. If you look at the positive one, the more you have income, the more you buy from Starbucks. So that's the positive way. And when it's zero, means your income is now related where you buy the coffee from, or whether you might not be a coffee drinker. So zero is association between the two variables, and -1 and +1. And when we say one is like a percentage, if we look at it, -100% and -100%. This is the link between a dependent and independent variable. Now, and the correlation coefficient, it can be, as we said, positive or a negative, depend on the direction of relationship. And we brought this, the more you have income, the more you buy from Starbucks, that's a positive correlation. The more you have income, the less you buy from, let's say Starbucks again. That's a negative relationship. If you look at the Tim Horton, also same thing. The more you buy, you have income, the less you buy from Tim Horton, that's negative. And the more you have, the more you have income, the more not to buy from. It is the association between them. So this is the table where you, when it comes, we said 1 to -1. So if there is between 1 plus or -1, 81.81 or 81% to 100, 1 and -1, then it's a very strong correlation between them. And this is where, if it's a 61, whether it's a positive or negative, to 80 is a strong, and then you have moderate, and you have a weak. And this is like when you do a research and you ask 100 people saying, what's your income? It says $60,000 a year. Do you buy coffee? They said yes. Out of these $60,000, you ask 100 people who make $60,000. If 80 and more people says we buy more coffee from Starbucks, then it's a very positive, very strong correlation. If 60.6 or 61% to 80%, they said we buy from Starbucks, that's strong. Now let's reverse it about Tim Horton. People who make $60,000 and more, they buy less, 80% of them, they buy less from Tim Hortons, then there is a negative correlation between them. The more your income, the less you buy coffee from them. So that's where you have positive and negative number there. So the coefficient of determination, which is our square number of measurement of proportion of invariable counters, one another, can be represented in percentage. As we said -1 plus 1 could be 100% positive percentage. There is a, you say there is a positive relationship 70% or 80%. There is a negative relationship 70% or 80%. Now the range is from 0 to 1, as we said, because they use R squared and shows, whether there is a positive or negative. The larger the size, the coefficient of determination, the stronger is the linear between the two variables, as we said. The last slide that I'm going to talk about it is the influence of measurement of scale on colorations. And you need to look at regressions models, and the regression analysis is about the statistical techniques, analyze a linear relationship between the two variables, estimating the coefficient for an equations for a straight line, and one variable designated as an independent variable. We say that there is independent and there is a dependent variable. So always you will have something as a dependent variable designated, which is probably in this case, when it comes to the coffee, the income level. Other variables called independent, or predicted. So the more income you have, the more buy coffee from Starbucks. So your income becomes independent, and your buying numbers of coffees becomes dependent to your income. So you can predict that. And last, probably the assumption behind the regression analysis, and it's usually is a linear relationship. As we said, Y and X, the more income you have, numbers of buying coffees. Describe the relationship between two variables, dependent and independent. So your Y, which is your income, or X is your independent, and buying number of coffees is dependent variable. Does not interfere on one variable influencing the another variable. So we want to make sure that the variable is really, they are dependent and independent from each other. Now the rest of these things, we will stop up to here, and you need to look at this, how it works. When you are making like a $60,000, this is when you start buying a Starbucks. So if your income is $60,000, below $60,000, $59.99, then you're not buying a Starbucks. So that's what's the zero. Once you make 60,000, this is where the intercept. So you need to make sure that where is start the point, and it does not start from the zero, start from that. So I'm going to stop up to here, and I will mail you the information, and probably I'll see you on the next class. If you have any question, please let me know, write it now. And if you don't, you have a good week, and I'll see you next class when you send your assignments and for the next test.